Welcome to the Dadlife podcast. I have a very special guest today. She's 36, married, a mom of 3 daughters, and has MS. Welcome to the podcast, Heather.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Hello. So how long have you been living with MS?
9 years.
So when did you first start noticing things going on?
In January of 2010, I started having a numb left leg, extremely numb, the whole entire leg. And it went on for months. And then one of my best friends decided that she was going to take me into the hospital to the ER because of it. And I took the day off work, and that was the start of everything.
Were you having a hard time walking?
Yes.
So what did they tell you at that time?
They did a CT scan that day and saw that there was nothing out of place in my spine, which was a good thing. And the doctor there actually stated, because of that symptom and a few other things that I had written down that had happened over the months prior, he feels that it is most likely MS. And then 3 months after that, I had my MRI and was diagnosed on June 7th of 2010.
And by that time, you were already a mom?
I was, yep. I had both daughters. One was just over a year, and my other daughter was 4.
So how long did that numb leg last for? Did that go away?
It did go away. It probably lasted about 6 months. And in the time just before the diagnosis, I ended up having vision disruption in my left eye called optic neuritis, which is another huge symptom which most people get diagnosed with MS from, but I was diagnosed due to my leg.
So with your leg, does that come and go? Like, do you still get that?
At that time, it came and went, but currently now I have permanent damage, I guess. The MS has left permanent damage, so I have chronic leg pain and issues.
In that same leg, or is it both?
Yes. And it is both, but the left leg is the worst leg.
And what about your eye? Do you get that still too?
Yeah, if I overheat, if it's a hot day out or have a hot bath or go in a hot tub, my eye goes blurry.
So could you explain exactly what MS is?
So MS stands for multiple sclerosis, which means multiple scars. And it's an autoimmune disease that attacks the myelin sheath in your surrounding the nerves in your brain and your spinal cord. So it causes holes and inflammation in these spots, which disrupt the transmission of messages between nerves and different parts of the body, as well as the optic nerve in the eye.
So is there medication that you take for that?
Yes.
So there's no cure, right?
No cure. They have a substantial amount of medications that they try and use to slow progression. And I have failed 6 of them, 5 of which did not work, one of which caused too many side effects, so they chose to take me off of that one. And the last medication I'm on, I'm coming up to my 2nd treatment for it, and it will be the last drug that I go on for the MS.
Why the last one?
personal preference.
So if it doesn't work, then you're just done?
I feel that not, well, yes, because they're all kind of the same thing. They knock your system down, your immune system, and it just seems like too much. I'd rather go on a natural route of things. Diet.
And just changing your diet,
Diet, lifestyle. I also take other medications for pain management.
So where do you have this pain?
From the top of my head to the bottom of my toes.
Really? Everywhere?
Yes.
And like constantly?
Constant. Some days are worse than others.
So how long did you work for after you were diagnosed?
I worked for 4 years after the diagnosis, and I worked in healthcare as well, which was interesting in itself because I took care of patients that also had MS. So you kind of get to see what the possibility of your future is. But it also kept me lighthearted, and through that, I gained a lot of friends that understood the disease more than most people. But I miss work a lot.
So working with these people who had MS, what kind of future did they have? What did you see?
Well, there's one lady that she had it probably diagnosed for over 50 years with it. And she was the most chipper, happiest little Scottish woman I think anybody would have met. She just was so amazing that it keeps you upbeat, and it kept me positive.
So is she mobile?
At that point, no, she was in a wheelchair.
Oh. So does that always happen?
You can't really predict the future with it. But I think in the tail end of life, most end up immobile, yes.
The age when you found out, is there an average age, or can anybody get it?
I was probably around the age that most people get diagnosed, but it's common, I think, between the ages of 25 to 40. I do know somebody who was 17 years old when she was diagnosed.
Wow.
And it's even with me, when they look back in my history of health, they figured that I was probably around 16 when my symptoms had started.
Oh, looking back, what kind of symptoms did you have?
A lot of fatigue. I was always run down. A lot of anxiety, pain, just things that weren't normal. And I actually had been tested for lupus, and that had come back negative, and never would have thought to do an MRI. I did have eye issues, but when you go for a normal vision test, it's not the same as when you see an optic neuritis. When you have optic neuritis, you can't use glasses to fix the vision.
So what's the symptoms of that?
Double vision. You can lose your vision. It can be black.
Has that happened to you?
Yes. My vision wasn't black. It was more of shadows. So I could only see shadows.
Both eyes?
No, just my left eye.
And how long did that last for?
I think about 4 weeks.
It's a long time to see shadows.
Yes, it is.
So the day you found out, what did you do? Did you tell your family that day?
Yes.
And how did they react?
I'm definitely very blessed that way. I've got a very supportive family. my parents have been there since the get-go, always have been there. My husband was with me with the neurologist at the neurologist office when I was diagnosed. It's hard. Was a time a lot of people didn't understand it, because it is hard to understand when you can't see the disease.
Yeah, I'd gotta be honest. I'd feel that way sometimes. Because you can't see it.
I find it's becoming more visible in my walking now, though. My balance is pretty bad, and I definitely don't walk straight anymore.
So is that something that comes and goes? Does it improve?
It can for some. It did for me for a few years, but it's seeming to stick permanent now.
What was happening? Like what made you decide to quit work?
My employer.
They told you to quit?
They suggested that I look into taking some time off.
Why?
Mainly because they actually cared about me, which I don't think a lot of people can say. I had a good relationship with my employer, and one of my supervisors was an RN, and they were more on a supportive point and noticed that it was starting to weigh on me.
Like, what did they see? You tired?
My energy level, my strength was going down. So when you're caring for individuals, you need to have the strength. You need to have that energy.
So how did that affect your home life? Like having little kids and...
Well, first, when I went off, financially it was okay because I worked for the government, and so pay wasn't a huge drop at that time. And then when it came to the point of taking out a long-term disability through what we paid into, they said that it was pre-existing from when I started paying into those benefits, so I didn't get the LTD coverage.
Oh, really?
So I had to take out my pension to support us for that year. And the girls, I've been really lucky with my kids. They're good kids, so it wasn't too hard. It was nice to be at home at the beginning, but I'm so young that it was hard. You almost feel like a failure.
Yeah. So were they good with helping out with chores and that kind of stuff?
Yeah. And I never put more than they could handle on their shoulders, and they're still super good, being 10 and 14.
So they understand?
They do.
Does anyone else in your family have MS?
No. Which is not common, but not uncommon. But we have a pretty good handle on our ancestry within both sides of my family, and there's nobody that indicates having anything like this.
So since you have it, does that in any way increase the risk of your daughters?
They say no. The doctors don't feel so. But I guess, we'll only know within time, but we know what we're looking for if that were to be the case.
So how much does the medication cost that you take currently?
So for the first 5 doses, which I do the first year, is about $158,000 for 5 days.
I can't even believe that's that much. Why is it so expensive? And how much is covered? Like, how much of that do you actually have to pay?
I'm just very grateful I live in Canada. I haven't had to pay for any of those 6 medications. All my drug companies have covered them.
Oh.
But there are people out there that aren't lucky, and especially in the States, it can be...
So is it because you don't make enough, or is that everybody that doesn't have to pay for it in
I'm
Canada?
thinking it has to do with some of my income. But fair pharmacare, being in Canada, takes a chunk of it. And last year, the drug company that we have did take a chunk of it as well, but I don't know if our current one will.
So what are all these pain management pills that you take?
Um,
Like how many do you take?
5.
And every day?
Yes.
What do they do?
One of them is a, I don't really know how to explain it, but by saying a neurological muscle relaxant. So instead of something like Robaxacet, it works with my nerves instead of the independent muscles. One of them is for the nerve pain, chronic pain.
What does nerve pain feel like?
Have you ever had the flu when you have a fever and you have the pain before you take your Tylenol?
Yes?
Similar to that.
Like you
Or
feel like you have a fever?
kind of without the chills of it. Just that pain or chronic, constant aching everywhere.
So that one pill takes that away?
The 5 pills of the one type of pill that I take daily can help, yes.
You take 5 of the same pill every day?
Yes. I take 9 pills every day.
So what do the other ones do?
Well, one is for anxiety, and one's for my stomach because of one of the MS medications. I have to start taking that because it's caused some damage in my stomach. And
So it's pain that you have from it?
yeah.
So basically all the pills are for pain?
Yes.
Do you try marijuana?
Yes.
Does that really help?
It does really help. It definitely helps with sleep. Although the last few nights I've been being woken up. So I don't know. I'm going to have to maybe take more.
So do you smoke it every day, every night?
Yeah, just in the evening.
And do you think, does that help more than any of the other pills? Like, is that something you could just do and get rid of the pills?
I would love to get to that point.
Do you think that's possible?
I mean, the only way to find out is trying. But it's a lot of, like, it's slowly taking yourself off medications.
So you just can't stop?
No.
Is there anything that makes it worse, like weather or certain types of foods?
Food, I'm not too sure, but I'm sure that eating not well is not a good thing.
Like coffee crisps?
I love my coffee crisps. They're good. Heat, so hot summer is really bad for causing fatigue, and it really, really depletes the energy. And that's quite common in most people with MS. And cool weather, or we'll say colder weather, so more winter, it causes more pain.
Really?
Yeah. So fall and spring are my favorite seasons, preferably fall.
So it causes pain?
Yeah. Like it just makes everything increase that way, but it's somewhat better for the fatigue because you're not as tired, but you're in more pain. Similar to those people that would deal with arthritis. Will sometimes causes things to flare up.
So since you've been living with this for 9 years, are you happy? Are you like, do you, I can just, I imagine I would just feel depressed. I seem to focus on negative stuff more than the positive. Do you feel happy? Do you get down? Like you always seem to have a smile on your face,
I do my
or do you
best
hide it from people?
to see the positive. I definitely have my down days. They seem to be getting more common,
Your down days?
my down days, but
Is there something that is causing that?
I think just that my mobility is starting to become actually affected more than it used to be. So the things I enjoyed doing, I can't do as much. So going for hikes, taking the dogs for longer walks. Now I'm stuck to walking in the dog park or sometimes on the beach, but I find it quite difficult to walk on the sand.
Will that affect your driving at some point?
Yes. Except that I'm grateful that it's my left leg because I drive with my right leg. So I'm fine there for now. And my vision's fine right now. So, but I won't get behind the wheel of the vehicle if I'm fatigued or not feeling like I should be on the road.
So do you always nap every day?
I used to. I've stopped that because I was feeling like it was becoming more of a negative thing, like I was trying to hide from the world and my mind.
So does that make it harder to get through the day without your naps?
Yes. So it's kind of a tough choice sometimes.
Why don't you go back to napping?
I don't know. It's tough. I don't know.
Do you ever feel embarrassed?
Yes. The days I have to bring the cane out, I have a hard time with.
Have you ever experienced anybody saying anything to you about that?
Not my cane. I was parking because I have disabled parking pass, and I was parking at the grocery store, and a gentleman decided to point out that I was parking in one of those parking spots, and I said back to him, I know, I have my sticker for it. And he repeated himself, and then I got out with my cane, and he realized that he did not make a good choice on commenting on that.
You beat him with your cane?
I very much wanted to, but I had children with me. But it's hard because it's one of those invisible illnesses until you actually tell somebody or they see you moving and then they realize like, oh, okay. But even the fatigue alone, walking across a parking lot can be unbelievably exhausting.
So you've met a lot of people over the years with MS?
I've got an account on social media that I've met people from around the world on. But here in Victoria, I have 2 very close friends that have it and a few others that I've been in contact with.
Did you meet them because of it?
Yes.
Like how?
Well, one I met through my neighbor, and it just kind of has fallen into place more recently in our friendship. And the other person I met during one of my treatments with previous medications that we had to go into a clinic for an infusion, and he's quite a bit further along with it than I am, but we keep each other very positive, and he's a very, very, very positive man.
Is he someone that you like? Do you phone these people when you're feeling down, since they can understand more than probably the average person?
We more chat online or through texting, but definitely can phone call if need be. Meet with them, go for coffee and tea.
With these symptoms that you had earlier on that you didn't realize that were symptoms, if it was caught earlier, would that have changed anything?
I would like to say yes, because I would have been able to get on a medication
Just to slow it down?
just to slow it down, and now I find things are slowly progressing more than going into remission. So back when I was 18, 19, I probably could have been on something to slow my progression, and it wouldn't have progressed to the extent it is. But at the same time, I probably wouldn't have been able to have my children, because you can't become pregnant on these medications. You have to jump through hoops for making sure that you don't get pregnant on them.
Oh. So when you're in remission, do you have symptoms? Like, what does that mean?
Usually it means that whatever the relapse consisted of, so we'll use my numb leg as an example, that goes away. So it's like it never happened. But as time goes on, because the damage done obviously doesn't heal back to perfect. So over the years, the more damage done, the more things kind of hang around, or the scar tissue can cause inflammation.
So what you have the pain, but what is the damage? Like, what's happening?
So for me, a lot of my lesions seem to be in my spinal cord. So from my cervical spine, which is my neck, and through my thoracic spine. I have spots on my brain, but my leg, we're pretty sure, has to do with the lesions in my neck. I've got one that's 2 centimeters.
So when your leg gets worse, does that mean the lesions are getting bigger? Or are you getting more lesions? Or
Yes, usually the more lesions. And those, you got to remember that my leg is because of the damage in my spinal cord. So the leg has nothing to do with anything. It's very confusing.
So are there other parts of your body that's damaged?
Tips of my fingers often go very numb. I have weakness. I've had hearing loss my whole life, but
Like even before you had
before I've had the
diagnosed?
MS, but what has happened, I've always called it hearing dyslexia. So I can hear the noise coming from people's mouths, but I cannot process the words they are saying.
What if I talk like that? Like that?
That's pretty much what my brain sounds like.
Really?
Yeah.
So is it both ears?
My hearing loss is in my right ear, and it's substantial.
So what caused that, do you know?
I was born with it.
Oh, really?
Maybelline.
What?
I said Maybelline. She's born with it. Anyways.
Is getting a hearing aid an option?
It is.
Those are pretty expensive, aren't they?
They are expensive and it wouldn't be covered. So I'm not ready for that yet.
So can you read lips?
I've gotten good with it.
In your opinion, do you think there will ever be a cure for MS?
It's a tough one to answer for me, because the disease is so individual. Like, it's different for every single person. And it's the immune system.
So when you say it's different for every person, how is it different? Like, do they still get the lesions and they still get the same kind of symptoms?
Yes.
But
It's just there's so many levels of progression where there's, somebody who will have the moment where they get their diagnosis and that's it. They'll never have another issue.
What do you mean? Like no more symptoms?
Yeah, like no more flare-ups or relapses or anything like that. And then you have other people who, they'll get diagnosed and then within the year they're in a wheelchair. You can't. It's such a confusing illness, as many others are as well. I can't see how you could find a cure for something that's so complex.
Since you get all these symptoms and it makes people, it puts them in wheelchairs, and does MS kill? Like, can you die from MS?
I think quite often people die from a secondary issue. So, when you become immobile, when you get closer to the end of your life, things start to fail. And, if you're not as mobile, it's kind of hard to explain, but.
Do you think about that?
I don't. I've never had that type of fear of life. I'm not afraid of death. I definitely live day to day. I do not live in the past and I do not live in the future.
Do your kids ever say that they're scared? Does that scare them?
My 14-year-old definitely has had moments where she gets upset or nervous. My youngest hasn't voiced any opinions.
Is that because she doesn't understand it as much?
I think so. And she's also a very, she keeps to herself.
Does your husband ever talk to you about it? Like, now that it's been so long, does it scare him?
I think it upsets him because, we've been together for 15 years. So he knew me at 20. And then now it's physically, it's such a change. My brain is still who I was energy wise and what I want to do in life. But physically, I can't do those things anymore.
Do you think that's hard for him?
Yes.
Does he say that, or does he?
I can see it. I see it in his eyes, and it definitely upsets him because he knows that it's not who I am.
Must be hard not being able to do anything about it.
Yes. And my parents, they also feel that way. I'm 36 years old and a mother, and an adult and have been on my own since I was 17 and a half. So, you know, they still call me or text me every single day to make sure I'm okay. If I need anything, they're always there. Always.
That's nice to have. Well, thank you for coming on the podcast and talking to me about it.
Thank you very much for having me.
And thank you for listening. Remember to subscribe on YouTube at Dadlife Podcast 1. Also Dadlife Podcast 1 on Facebook and Twitter, and just Dadlife Podcast on Instagram. I'll see you in a week.